A single photograph can change everything. In 2014, a routine police booking photo turned an unknown man from Stockton, California into an overnight global phenomenon. The internet didn't care that the picture was a mugshot. All anyone could talk about were the piercing blue eyes, the sharp jawline, and the face that looked more suited to a fashion campaign than a police database. Within hours, the image had spread across every corner of social media, and the man behind it, Jeremy Meeks, found himself with a nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life, the Hot Felon. But more than a decade later, where is he now? Has fame lasted, or has it faded the way most viral moments do? Stick with us as we walk through the incredible, complicated, and often painful journey of the man whose mugshot broke the internet. Long before cameras and modeling contracts, Jeremy Meeks was simply a boy trying to survive a chaotic home. Born in February 1984 in Tacoma, Washington, he entered a family already struggling under the weight of addiction and instability. Both of his parents battled substance abuse, and by his own account, his mother continued to use drugs even while she was pregnant with him. His father wasn't present for long. He was convicted of a violent crime linked to a dispute involving Jeremy's mother, and was sent to prison for decades, leaving Jeremy essentially fatherless before he could form any real memory of him. With his mother in and out of the legal system herself, young Jeremy had almost no stable adult figure to guide him. It was his older sister who stepped in, taking on a caregiving role, while she herself was still practically a child. Other relatives in the family were also entangled in crime, from theft to more serious offenses, and Jeremy grew up believing that a law-abiding life simply wasn't realistic for someone like him. Struggling with an undiagnosed learning difficulty and surrounded by hardship rather than opportunity, he made choices that reflected the only path he'd ever really been shown. By his mid-teens, he had relocated from Washington to Los Angeles, and instead of finding a fresh start, he found himself pulled deeper into street life and gang culture. Jeremy's teenage years were marked by violence and incarceration. At just 15, he ended up in a juvenile detention facility, and not long after his release, he was the victim of a brutal shooting and assault tied to gang conflict. He has since described those years as ones where survival meant adapting to constant danger, admitting that his education suffered so badly that he could barely read by the time he was a teenager. At 18, his life took a much more serious turn. He was charged with robbery and a violent assault, ultimately serving close to a decade behind bars, much of it at one of California's most notorious maximum security prisons. It was during this extended stretch of incarceration that something unexpected began to shift inside him. With time and forced stillness, he started teaching himself to read at a more advanced level, working through novels that gave him both an escape and, eventually, a new perspective on his own life. After finally being released in the summer of 2014, freedom didn't last long. He was swept up again during a coordinated law enforcement operation targeting gang activity, this time facing a firearm possession charge. That same day, local police shared a batch of booking photos publicly to highlight their crackdown, and one of those photos happened to be his. Nobody could have predicted what happened next. Within a single day, his mugshot had been shared, liked, and commented on thousands of times. People weren't focused on the charges against him, they were focused on his face. Entertainment blogs picked up the story almost immediately, turning the image into a meme, and social media users created dedicated hashtags celebrating his looks. Law enforcement officials later admitted they had never seen a post generate anywhere near that level of attention on their department's page. Modeling scouts and agencies began reaching out almost immediately, eager to sign the man whose photo had taken over the internet. It was a strange and almost surreal reversal. A document created to catalog an arrest had instead launched a modeling career. While all of this unfolded, Jeremy remained in custody awaiting trial, with a bail amount high enough that his family turned to public fundraising to help cover legal costs. When his case reached its conclusion in early 2015, he was convicted on a firearm-related charge. Notably, the presiding judge acknowledged the unusual circumstances of the case and the opportunities that opened up for him, ultimately reducing his sentence significantly compared to what prosecutors had originally sought, while also requiring him to complete a substance abuse treatment program behind bars. Jeremy has spoken since about how grateful he was for a judge who, in his words, looked at him as a person rather than just a case file. He ended up serving a little over a year of his sentence before being released in early 2016. Even while still incarcerated, he was inundated with mail, hundreds of letters a day, some containing money, and dozens of modeling and entertainment contracts he had no idea how to interpret. He's since joked that reading a modeling contract for the first time felt like trying to read a foreign language. Once released, Jeremy didn't waste time. He signed his first modeling deal almost immediately and quickly built a reputation as one of the most in-demand new faces in the industry. Within a few years, he was walking runways at major fashion weeks in cities like Milan and Paris, appearing at high-profile industry events, and featuring in campaigns for major fashion brands. His path into the industry is almost unheard of. Very few models, if any, have been discovered through a police booking photo rather than a casting call or chance encounter on the street. It places him in an unusual category alongside other famous, discovered by accident stories, though his origin remains arguably the most unlikely of them all. Modeling, however, wasn't the end of his ambitions. He transitioned into acting, appearing in a handful of films over the following years, including his debut in a feature that streamed on a major platform. He's spoken about drawing inspiration for some of his roles directly from his own experiences with incarceration and self-education, noting that he related deeply to characters who had to fight their way toward literacy and self-improvement from behind bars. When asked why he moved from modeling into acting, he explained that modeling never felt challenging to him, while acting gave him the kind of creative struggle and growth he was searching for. Throughout his rise, Jeremy has repeatedly expressed disbelief at how his life turned out, describing the whole experience as something that still feels surreal to him. He said publicly that he views his fame as a fragile blessing. One wrong decision, in his view, could unravel everything he's built. Behind the runway shows and magazine covers, Jeremy's personal life has been just as eventful. He married his wife years before his mugshot ever went viral, and together they welcomed a son, while he also became a stepfather to her 2 children from an earlier relationship. For years, she stood by him through the early, uncertain chapters of his transformation. That stability was tested when his sudden fame brought a wave of media attention to his personal life. In 2017, he was photographed on a yacht with the daughter of a British billionaire, a moment that made headlines and put considerable strain on his marriage. The couple divorced not long after. He went on to have another child with his new partner, though that relationship also ended after a couple of years. Since then, Jeremy has spoken about maintaining respectful co-parenting relationships with the mothers of his children, describing both women as excellent parents who work well together with him in raising their kids. Fatherhood, he said, has become one of his biggest motivations, a driving force behind his desire to break what he calls a generational cycle of incarceration that touched nearly every branch of his family. These days, he tends to keep the details of his romantic life largely private, choosing instead to share glimpses of his relationship with his children on social media. Interestingly, part of his lifestyle now includes spending significant time in Monaco, a place known for its strict privacy protections around public figures, which has allowed him a level of normalcy that would be far harder to find elsewhere. Now in his 40s, Jeremy Meeks has firmly established himself as more than just a viral moment. What started as an internet joke about a good-looking inmate evolved into an actual, sustained modeling and acting career spanning more than a decade. Beyond his professional work, he has become increasingly involved in advocacy, particularly focused on supporting young people in foster care and those caught up in the juvenile justice system, communities he understands on a deeply personal level. He's spoken about wanting to eventually create music aimed at young people, driven by his own memories of how the music he listened to as a teenager fed into anger and poor decisions. He said he wants any music he puts into the world to steer clear of glorifying violence or substance abuse, offering something more constructive to listeners who grew up the way he did. He's also credited the professionals around him, financial advisors and managers, for helping him adjust to an entirely new kind of life after spending most of his youth on the street. Financially, reports estimate his net worth to be in the multi-million-dollar range today, a staggering shift from where he started. He's been seen driving high-end vehicles, spending time aboard luxury yachts, and mixing with European royalty at charity galas focused on ocean conservation. Paparazzi still track his movements, a strange but fitting continuation of the same public fascination that started with a single photograph over a decade ago. Rather than simply enjoying his current success, Jeremy has expressed a desire to use his platform to tell his full story, not just the viral moment people remember, but everything that came before and after it. He's announced plans to release a memoir detailing his difficult childhood, his years in prison, his self-education, and his improbable rise to fame, complete with photography documenting his transformation. He's also mentioned interest in eventually adapting his life story for television, feeling that the complexity of his journey couldn't be properly captured in a single film. He's been clear that he wouldn't want to play himself in any such adaptation, preferring instead to let his story be told through someone else's performance while he focuses on shaping the narrative itself. Reflecting on everything he's been through, Jeremy has repeatedly returned to one central idea, that a difficult, even criminal past doesn't have to permanently define a person's future. His story, whatever one makes of it, stands as proof that circumstances can shift dramatically, sometimes because of a single unexpected moment, and sometimes because of years of quiet, deliberate effort to become someone different. What do you think about Jeremy Meeks' transformation from a viral mugshot to an international model and advocate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this look back at his story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more content like this.